Hello, thank you for joining us for CBM Calling. Today, we're talking about a very serious topic, which is the situation happening in Myanmar. Many of you have reached out to us, gravely concerned, and asking how you can support, how you can pray for the people in Myanmar during this difficult time. Today, I had a conversation with Roshan Mendis, who is the director of Asia Pacific Baptist Aid, who represents the relief and development efforts of a network of Baptist churches in that region. Thanks for joining us today, Roshan. How are you?
You're welcome. I'm good. I'm glad to be with you and to be able to share this time.
Thank you. It's been over 6 weeks now since the military takeover in Myanmar, and we've heard that over 200 people have been reported to be killed, and some people are saying there's actually a lot more than that. But many of the people who have been killed are young people, and I think that part of it is really hard for us to hear. As we're hearing about this crisis here in North America, to some degree, I'm wondering what the feeling is, though, in the Asia Pacific region. As this situation just continues on, I mean, particularly from the neighboring countries who are watching all of this unfolding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if I was to speak for myself, to some extent, I am, almost having flashbacks of situations that was somewhat similar, or having had to go through 30 years of civil war in the country as well. Just that feeling of knowing that the nation that you're in is kind of going into a brink of darkness is really, really, brings on a level of despondency. So, and around the region, given the type of geopolitics that we have, to a large extent, I would say there is empathy and sympathy with what's going on in Myanmar. While at the same time, we ourselves within the Asia Pacific region are kind of caught in a diplomatic bind in how we can respond to that as neighboring countries within the APAC or whichever like SAARC region or the broader Asia Pacific region, because some of the policies of our nations would perhaps impact how we might be able to raise some issues around it, may even have some impact upon our own selves if we were to raise it up in our own nations. So it's almost, while on one hand, we are very, very much with the people of Myanmar, we do understand the kind of feelings that they may have, the desperateness that they might feel with this twist and change of the situation there. And while that is true, at the same time, there is also a feeling of helplessness within our own selves at the limitedness of what we can do. Yes. And because that is very contingent on our national government response to that. And different governments in the region have been responding in different ways to that. So to many of the governments here, it has been a policy of non-interference, which is largely the kind of foreign policy that most of our nations would follow. So in that sense, there is a very mixed response to this. So while on social media, amongst young people in the region, there is a lot of vocalization of what's going on. At national levels, at convention level, there is a level of caution of what we can say. But within APBF, we have put out a statement in line also with what APBAid has done. And it's in support of the statement that the conventions of Myanmar put out as well at the time that it happened. So we have made a statement of solidarity and at the same time of concern about what's going on there.
Yes, I mean, what you are saying about our governments being cautious, I mean, I know here in Canada, we've been urging Canadians to advocate our government leaders to put more targeted economic sanctions on the current rulers. And I believe the US has done that, and the European Union as well is announcing that they're doing this. But there are also others in your region, as you say, who are not in line with that. Do you think there is more intervention that the global community can be doing in this situation?
I think on the government front, at a global community, UN and others, definitely verbalizing, vocalizing, expressing protest would make a difference. And the pressure that the people of your nations would bring upon your governments would have a degree of impact. Sanctions is to me, as one within the humanitarian community, it's almost like you really, it's a hard decision to make, because you do know that while on one hand sanctions are meant to cause a pinch on the government or the rulership of that particular nation, the impact of that on the grassroots to those who are most vulnerable, they become the hardest hit, because while those in power may enjoy some benefits, access, support, that they would be able to ride that particular time of sanction, most of the common people would be the ones hardest hit. So while sanctions seem to be like the first resort for most governments to actually bring pressure to bear upon a certain nation when they're contravening some kind of human right, the impacts of that on the general population is a question that remains with me as one in the kind of ministry that I'm involved in.
Yes, that's an excellent point. And I think that is one of the growing concerns out of this crisis, is that there is a looming humanitarian need that is going to be arising, that's been brought on by this. Already we're hearing that the price of food is rising, fuel costs are rising, and then possibly economic collapse of the country that could be coming if this goes on much longer. Is it fair to say that the poor families are going to be the first and the most deeply impacted by this?
Absolutely. And I think the nature of the situation now, and given the kind of people that actually started to protest, so it was not the common man, if you might use that term, that actually protested, but it was professionals. The medical professionals were the first on the front line, and so they have been impacted in terms of being able to carry out their practices, their professions, and along with them, following upon that, has been other professionals who also joined it. So it's not just the common man, if you might say, that is going to be affected, and the poor and the vulnerable, but even those in the middle strata of society would be equally impacted, and they're already being impacted, and are having issues about getting their everyday provisions. As you have mentioned, there's been almost like a 35% cost increase in terms of the cost of living there. The level of safety that people feel, the vulnerability for life and limb is one that is also impacting the scenario as it is. It's not just the economic fear, but it's also very much the fear to their freedoms, the fear of life in itself, and the ability to survive, to carry on their vocations. Because as I heard already, in about 6 of the townships, martial law has been declared, and there is the prediction or the suspicion that more townships would be declared under martial law. So that would mean that the daily functioning of those townships would be impacted as well. So that would cut across that entire population. We also have heard and seen, I think you might have seen on the news, certain townships, people are actually fleeing those towns because of the fear of martial law and the consequences of that kind of rulership in those areas. So it's not just about, the most vulnerable being affected, but it's actually cutting across all strata of society. You could conclude that the most vulnerable would be the most affected, yes. But that is not the only group.
Not the only group,
And
yes.
so that brings also the challenge on us as humanitarians, because most often our prioritization is on the most vulnerable. But in this present crisis that is going on in Myanmar, we need to understand that our support needs to be not only to those who are most vulnerable and clearly identified as such, but also the other strata, because though they may have by whatever baselines you might use, certain assets and wealth, in terms of daily subsistence and living, they are equally affected as well.
That's an excellent point. Well, we've been looking to the APBF to give us leadership in how we can help support the local ministries and churches who are on the ground, who are caring for people in this time. What can we do to support their efforts?
I think at this current point in time, what's going on there is there's a very dire need for medical assistance because of the shutdowns of the medical profession. So people with preconditions of medical illnesses are unable to access medical assistance. In addition to that, there are those who are either injured as a result of the the backlash by the military upon those who are protesting, and you actually need some emergency medical assistance as well. That's on one hand. We also have those who are being displaced in certain ethnic communities of the country, and access to those in terms of road access of communication, all of that is getting tightened and unable. And so as a result, even those people who are fleeing their townships, getting into forests and places like that, staying and living under trees, those are another group of people that are affected. And people actually don't have the cash that they need to survive. Even if they were to be able to access some kind of provision, they're not in a state in which they're earning an income of any sort, because there is this mass shutdown to be able to actually obtain that which they need. So that is as well another need that we are seeing. And what we are looking through APBF and the partnerships that we hope to enter into is the ability to support those medical clinics, to support those who are displaced, and also those who need actual provision in terms of their daily subsistence needs. So there would be some kind of cash grant or some of that which will go to them to be able to support themselves in that time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of Canadian Baptist churches and individuals who are watching who have been praying about this situation daily and have reached out to CBM to say, well, how can we be helping our brothers and sisters in Myanmar? And I think you've given some excellent suggestions there. And we will be posting the links as to how people are going to be able to help support that effort. So thank you so much, Roshan, for what you've shared today. Go ahead.
Add a word, one of the things that we do not want to see happening is where we burden those on the ground with support, one which is either inappropriate or done in a way that would cause a level of risk for themselves. And what we would really want to see is a coordinated effort in which we are able to work in collaboration, and that's one of our principles within the Baptist family, that we work in collaboration despite our autonomy of each other, but that we do work in collaboration in this effort to ensure that we support appropriately those on the ground with whatever we can, without burdening them or placing them at risk. And that would be one of the reasons we can't talk too much of detail. And so to be able to understand that as well, when you partner, that what we put in writing needs to be sensitized, needs to be put as classified information. You may not be able to get out some of those reports that you may need to talk about, of what's going on, of who is involved, in which areas they are, because all of that would be a risk to those on the ground. And so in that sense, you need to treat this as a very different type of humanitarian crisis in contrast to any other type of crisis that would have occurred otherwise.
Yes, thank you for raising that. And I think that's why we're looking to you for your expertise and leadership in this area. And we really want to urge people to use the links that we're going to be providing, because those are connected with you. And we continue to trust that your leadership in that area. So thank you for raising that point. I really want to thank you. Thank you for the excellent conversation we had today. I learned a lot, and I think people who are watching will as well. So thank you so much. And for all that you're doing, being on the ground, and the people that are actually providing the support on the ground. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Please do pray for Myanmar and pray for us as well, particularly for protection for those on the ground. And I think for many of them, this is a very overwhelming situation emotionally. And as we can see, it's a situation that is not going to have a easy or quick solution.
Yes.
It's going to be a long, drawn out scenario. And for the resilience that people would need, and particularly, as you were saying before, it's young people. And these individuals are probably not as experienced as some of their, parents and the earlier generations have gone through, the 50, 60 odd years of, military occupation kind of background. And so for their resilience to be able to meet up to this challenge, because they've been the ones who've been really most, expressive in their protest of this situation. So do pray for, regaining of democracy, and for a protection, and for the conventions and churches to be able to minister effectively in this context in a way that would make a difference.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for those points. And we will be praying for Myanmar and for you as well, and your work in the Asia Pacific region. Thank you so much, Roshan, for being with us. Take care.
Jennifer.
Bye.
You too. Thank you so much.